And Babcock, obviously, goblins. I mean, you love goblins.
Are you
love
sure?
Belcher, you love goblins. This is basically 2 rounds in a row where we have decks that you love on camera.
Yeah, Glenn and I are pretty good friends. I have a little extra money, so I got what I needed to get done. Yeah, I mean, goblins here. He's got all goblins, 2 tar fires, 4 aether vials. He's got some Thalia's main deck as well. So, pretty much it. I mean, he's got the white splash with Thalia. He's got Rest in Peace in his sideboard as well, does Babcock, but a ton of creatures. He does have Sting Scourger for something that could come into play. You're going to see Bloodstained Mire here, and we'll make sure that everything is good to go, as Babcock is going to sacrifice the Mire. We'll see if he has a Lackey or a Vial to begin things. You see he has 2 Vials in his hand.
There's a Vial. He also has a... Ooh, there's a Goblin Lackey.
Yeah.
So, one of the important 1-drops in the deck, along with Aether Vial. Allows him to get some pretty explosive starts. Obviously not as explosive as a traditional combo deck, but of the fair decks, definitely can do some unfair things. This is one of them.
Yeah, this is the start that you do want to have against a combo deck too. You want to basically get Lackey into play, hit him so you can put your creatures into play for free, and then disrupt the mana base of the combo decks with Rashad Port and Wasteland.
Yeah, and there's not that much interaction that Goblins has with a deck like Sneak and Show. However, you know, if it can get a Goblin Matron into play and search up a Sting Scourger, that is one card that can actually, he can put into play off of Show and Tell and potentially bounce an Emrakul or a Griselbrand.
Yeah, and that's a pretty important one, so we'll see if Babcock's able to actually find one of those. Again, he's got a lot of singletons in his deck for this week, and he has a Sharpshooter, a Tuk-Tuk Scrapper, Crankle Mob Boss, a Siege Gang Commander, that Sting Scourger that you didn't mention, and Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. So if he's able to somehow assemble that combo of Sting Scourger plus the Mirror Breaker, BBD will actually never get to really do what he wants to do with his deck. So we'll see if he can actually assemble that, but it's going to start with Goblin Lackey, but Brian doesn't look to be wasting very much time here with the Show and Tell.
So Show and Tell looks like it will be resolving, and Grant Babcock only has a ringleader. So not the worst thing. Could net him a Sting Scourger.
Oh, so he's going to trigger that. Top 4 cards are coming off. There's a Gem Palm Incinerator, a Thalian Guardian of Thraven, another Goblin Lackey, and a Bloodstained Mire. So it's 2 of 4 for the ringleader, but those goblins are not going to help defeat the Griselbrand.
Yeah, and another card that you see some Goblin players play is Goblin Warrens, which is another card that can actually force your opponent to sacrifice a creature. I don't believe he has that in his list, though.
Yeah, no, he's on the white splash there. No black splash there for the Warren Weirding, so he won't be able to actually make him sacrifice the Griselbrand. You know, you can certainly take that approach if you think there's going to be a lot of Sneak and Show in the format, but there hasn't been a ton of it recently. We do see an uptick with it right now, though, as you're going to see Babcock attempt to resolve another Goblin Lackey.
And it looks like he doesn't have that much mana to work with either. He kept a 1-land Lackey hand. You know, 1 mountain, Aether Vial Lackey, generally not the worst hand to keep, but right here facing a turn 2 Sneak and Show, not the best spot to be in when there's a Griselbrand on the other side of the table. So
not at all. As you see, Forcible's going to take care of the Lackey. No attacks, of course, because of Griselbrand, and he just has to pass the turn back. Does Babcock over to Braun Duin. Braun Duin is going to activate Griselbrand, pay 7, draw 7, and let the fun begin.
And at this point, Brian probably just looking for maybe a Sneak and Show so he can try to finish off Babcock next turn. Maybe he is willing to just go for it and cast another Show and Tell to put the Emrakul that he has in hand into play. Although, you know, with a hand like Force of Will and the Griselbrand in play, he might just be able to win with the Griselbrand alone. Not sure he needs to do much else other than just counter anything that he's afraid of from Babcock's side of the board. He has to be wary of, if he does get hit by that Goblin Lackey, what could potentially come into play. You know, could it be a Matron? You know,
yeah.
Although if Babcock did have the Matron, it likely would have came into play last turn.
All right, so a bunch of cards will be drawn. Braun Duin sitting at 4.
Braun Duin does have the Ancient Tomb, and he does have a Lotus Petal. So if he does, and we know that he has an Emrakul in his hand as well. So if he's able to get a sneak attack, he can actually cast it this turn, activate it, and get the Emrakul and just win the game this turn.
It doesn't look like he has it, though.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he has it.
He looks a little bit frustrated, so he just has to move on in there with the old Griselbrand. Attack for 7, going to go up to 11. Not sure if he has much of a follow-up either. I mean, he could just have Show and Tell and put in the Emrakul if he'd like. That's certainly an option.
I think, yeah, the only risk there, I guess, is that maybe you expose yourself a little to a Matron, but probably not the worst thing in the world.
So there's your Lotus Petal. Scalding Tarn's the land that's played. Looks like we might see some discardsies. Or maybe we see that. Okay, I think he's just going to go with Show and Tell.
Yeah, it looks like we're just going to get a Show and Tell here, which should put the Emrakul into play. Grant will get to put something in play, maybe a Sharpshooter.
Yeah, not really that many good options for Grant to put into play. And it's going to be a
War
War Chief. But again, when you only have 1 mana, there's not really a ton that you can do with that. You have to try to power through an Emrakul, and you're realizing this is going to be your last turn for sure with 1 mana. He can't chain off or anything. You take a look at his deck, let's see if he has a Goblin Pile Drivers.
Well,
he only has 1.
Even though he only has 1 land, he can top deck a Stink Scourger.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So Stink Scourger comes down, it bounces the Emrakul, he attacks for 2, 4, 6, 7, drops Braun down to 4, then he could put the Sharpshooter into play off of the Goblin Lackey, and then suddenly we have a game again.
Yeah, I think the only caveat to that plan is that Braun would have to not have Force of Will, as you see Babcock tapping the top card of his deck, hoping for a Stink Scourger. There's a Cavern of Souls.
No. There's one way around it, but
and that is going to do it. So Grant is going to concede the game. Brian is going to win game number 1. Sneak and Show versus Goblins. Doesn't take very long for Sneak and Show to win. Once Griselbrand gets into play, and it did not take Brian long to do so. So he's going to be up a game. As we're going to take a look at the sideboards here, I'll go over the Goblins one, since that is my bread and butter, as it were. 4 Pith and Needle, 4 Rest in Peace, 3 Pyrokinesis, 2 Ethersworn Canons, Numazawa Shite, and a Wear Terror. What you find here are no cards that you can actually punish people for playing Show and Tell. A lot of the time, I know myself, I play a card like Angel of Despair. Some people play Confusion in the Ranks, so when a player casts a Show and Tell, you can actually punish them for doing so. You're not going to find any of those cards here. So the options here are pretty limited. Pithing Needle's pretty narrow. It's really only good against Sneak Attack, and if they're on the Show and Tell draw, not really going to do very much. Ethersworn Canonist is pretty much just a glorified 2/2, where it's actually going to be kind of a drawback for you, because you can't play multiple spells in one turn. Numazawa Shite, Emrakul, and Griselbrand don't really care about that. And Wear and Tear, only really good against Sneak Attack, but if they play Sneak Attack, they're probably going to activate it in the same turn. So not a lot of good sideboard options here for Grant.
Yeah, Pithing Needle, again, you can name Griselbrand.
You can try. Yeah, I guess you can name Griselbrand. You could try to spike a fetch land.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. Not the most effective card. You see a lot of people board into Angel Despair, but yeah, not many options here. It looks like, honestly, he might just keep... He's got 2 Tarfires in his main. I mean...
Those suck.
Yeah.
I can promise you that.
Maybe he just wants to swap 2 Tarfire with 2 Pithing Needle, and maybe like hedge a little bit against Sneak Attack. Shuts out 4 of the cards in Brian's list.
Okay.
On Brian's side, he's got 2 copies of Through the Breach, 2 copies of Flusterstorm, 2 copies of Red Elemental Blast, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 3 Blood Moon, 2 Pyroclast, and 2 Echoing Truth. Now, obviously, Flusterstorm, Elemental Blast, Cage, and Blood Moon not really effective in this matchup.
Yeah.
Pyroclasm's obviously very good. So is Echoing Truth. Not really sure if it's worth bringing in this matchup.
It's like kind of this thing that like buys you some time, but like if you're familiar with how Goblins will typically sideboard against a Sneak Attack deck, it involves things like King Scourger or Angel Despair or Confusion of the Ranks. So Echoing Truth's not really going to save you from those cards.
Yeah, he, in his main deck, he's got the Griselbrands, he has the Emrakuls, he has the Show and Tells, Lotus Petals, Force of Wills, Brainstorm, Gitaxian Probe, Ponder, Sneak Attack. I don't really see anything that he wants to board out. The only thing maybe is Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce obviously not very effective against a deck like Goblins that's so heavy creatures. There's maybe you can try to get a sideboarded Pyroblast that they could be bringing in, but in general, Spell Pierce probably seems like the weakest card here for him.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with you on that one.
So I could see probably just taking out the Spell Pierce for definitely the 2 Pyroclasms, and maybe just another Through the Breach.
Okay.
Just bringing in
Some
one
redundant
of those
effects.
Get a redundant effect there.
I really, really like how people are moving towards Gitaxian Probe and Legacy. You see Braun Duin has 4 in his deck list, and we see it more and more in Rug Delver nowadays. I just really, really like that they are not undervaluing the information game. It certainly doesn't hurt that the card cantrips and is free, but I like that these decks are moving more towards that, so they can work with information so they know when they need to go off or what they need to look for with their cantrips and stuff like that.
Well, particularly for like a deck like Sneak and Show. I mean, talk about a deck that wants perfect information. You're casting Show and Tell. Do they have Caracas? Like, what will happen if I cast a spell? Gitaxian Probe lets you know exactly what you need to do and whether or not you can cast it. So, yeah, I agree with you. I love Gitaxian Probe. That the fact that people are starting to play it more, particularly in decks like Sneak and Show.
So we see both players finishing shuffling up each other's decks. If you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Osip Lebedovich, here in Philadelphia. The Star City Games Open Series has made its stop to the city of brotherly love. And if you guys do want to join us on Twitter, do feel free. We'll be checking it all weekend long at SCG Live, hashtag SCGPHL for your tweets, as we do begin Game 2 of round number 5 here between Sneak and Show and Goblins. See if Babcock, who will be on the play, can tie this thing up and move to a Game 3.
Looks like he did bring in the wear and tear. I did see a split card in his hand.
Okay, just one? Is he going to take a mulligan here?
He's going to mulligan, which makes sense because wear and tear is effectively a mulligan anyway, so you're basically at 6 cards already.
Yeah, and this is a matchup where you do need to mulligan aggressively. You're looking for a Goblin Lackey to get things started. You're okay with keeping a hand with the Aether Vial, but if you had a preference, you're looking for a Goblin Lackey, preferably through a Cavern of Souls, so Force of Will does not kind of screw up your game plan, and just mess with their mana as much as you can. That is your plan. And if you can stumble upon a Sting Scourge in your hand to kind of trump a show and tell, that works too.
Probably an opening hand of either, Matron, Sting Scourger is probably a reasonable keep there.
Yeah,
even if you don't have the 1-drop, just because, it gives you outs to a potential turn 2 or 3 show and tell.
As long as one of those lands is a Wasteland or Rishadenport, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, you need a way to mess with their mana early and often. Rishadenport does promote that, letting you tap down some of those Soul Ring lands in Ancient Tomb and City of Traders, and maybe you can catch a non-basic with Wasteland depending on how Braun Duin's draw lines up.
Yeah, so ideally, though, Babcock wants turn 1 Cavern of Souls on Goblins, Goblin Lackey, turn 2 Port.
And he's going to send this back. He's going to go down to 5. If you're Braun Duin, you're wondering, you see some very fast mulligans here. So if you're Braun Duin, you may be curious about maybe he's trying to mulligan for a card like Angel of Despair or Confusion in the Ranks, or maybe his hand just sucks. But I know there are a lot of Goblin players out there who do play a card like Angel of Despair. Seen Jim Davis do it before as well. It's not out of the wheelhouse for Goblins players to do this, and mulligan to find them in this matchup.
And, Babcock's t-shirt obviously gives Brian a little information that he does like to party hard.
Yeah, that's
so
important.
That alone, I think, is going to give him a little information as to how he might sideboard.
A great song there by Andrew W.K.
That is a good song.
It's very good, yes.
One of the artists that kind of got forgotten. One of those 90s artists.
I think you're using artists liberally. I think that's what you're doing.
Let's see if Babcock is okay with his 5-card hand here. Oof. Looks like it's 2 mountains, 2 pithing needles.
It's a lot of those.
And
lead off with this.
Scalding Tarn?
Yeah. Hope to hit for the best. We'll confirm with you guys at home what that Python Needle is naming just as soon as we do know. There's an island there for Braun Duin. Going to pass the turn back. No cantrip necessary. As a Gem Palm Incinerator was the draw here for Babcock, so wouldn't be surprised to see him cycle that. And the name there with Python Needle was Griselbrand. So it's only going to be a 7/7 lifelinking flyer.
Yeah, that's the main reason I don't like the card there. It's like, what's the best thing that you can do? Just take 7 in the air and they gain 7?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to run it out on turn 1, I kind of like just taking a chance and maybe screwing them a little bit with naming Scalding Tarn.
Yes, Tarner Misty.
Yeah. But either way, looks like Babcock does shut down the Griselbrand activations if that ever comes online. But Brian Brandon does actually have a sneak attack in his hand, so that second Python Needle could actually be relevant.
All right, well, we are going to find out, that's for sure.
And and basically the only answer that he would have to the Python Needle would be if he boarded in the Echoing Truth, or he could backdoor into this Reader Breach as well.
Sure.
Emrakul's Annihilation effect is also a way to do it, Python Needle, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. I think you got bigger problems there if you're losing your needles. But, we don't want to compound it too much.
So we just have a Brainstorm from Brian, and then a Misty Rainforest crack. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Take a look at 3. See if we want to keep him. That was a fast shuffle.
Was he had the Lotus Petal, and it looked like a Sneak Show too, but doesn't look like looks like he's needing some action here.
Certainly no interest in keeping any of those cards. Just get that out of here.
He already has a sneak attack. I think he's looking for a fatty at this point. Can't be certain. Yep. So it looks like he drew a second sneak attack. So this Python Needle could be really good. And Babcock has looks like he has a Cavern of Souls here. Cavern of Souls, does he have a Goblin Chieftain in his hand? Looks like a Goblin Chieftain.
Yep, so there is your 2/2.
There we go. So a little pressure on the board now. 2/2 haste. All the other goblins gain +1/+1. So Brian goes down to 18 now, or I believe 17. I think he took one from a Misty Rain.
Yeah, it should be sitting pretty at 17. Here's a Scalding Tarn.
So Brian finally has access to red mana if he chooses. But Babcock gets to untap. Brian doesn't make any plays. Still has those sneak attacks in his hand.
Looks like Babcock has a lackey. I don't know if he has anything to put into play with it.
So maybe, he chooses not to use the Cavernous Soul, so potentially trying to bait out a Force of Will here.
Okay.
Kind of like this play, because he has that Pine Needle. He knows he wants that needle to resolve. So I like this play a lot. He baits,
Yeah.
and BBD falls for it, and he forces the Goblin Lackey there. So Babcock's plan actually worked if he does choose to play the Pine Needle this turn.
And Cavern, don't forget, the Cavern is on human.
Oh, the Cavern's on human.
Yeah, for the Thalia, okay.
There we go.
So now Sneak Attack is going to take even longer to get to the party, and I'm not sure if Brian... Yeah, he just drew a show, and I don't know if he has anything to do with it, though. If he can even cast it?
He can show and tell...
He can show and tell in Sneak
Basically
Attack,
just put a Sneak Attack into play, but he has the Cavernous... He's got the City of Traders, so he can actually cast the Sneak Attack this turn if he wants to.
Okay.
He'll have 5 mana.
Alright, Lotus Spell is going to cost 1 more, so he's going to cast that. Now, there's a City of Traders.
Oh, should he have sacked land prior?
What's that? Why would he do that?
Well, won't the City of Traders?
City of Traders is when you play a land.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not when a land comes into play, so he's safe. Chieftain going to untap. Babcock gonna draw a card, not a Bonfire of the Damned. Surprise, surprise.
So 2 cards in his hand. Maybe it looks like that he does have a second Pine Needle in his hand. I'm not sure, but
I believe he does too. I'm not sure if he knows it. Like if he names Sneak Attack right now, he's doing like really, really well for himself if he plays that other needle.
Well, my question is, if you're gonna board in those needles, what exactly are they there for? If not to name Sneak Attack, so he has to pay 1 more. Because of Thalia. So if you can't just sit in your hand. I think if you're going to cast it, now's the time. You have 1 on Griselbrand. The only other card that you can really effectively name would be Sneak Attack. So that's the only card that will get you any kind of value. If Brian actually is able to resolve a Sneak Attack, he'll be able to activate it next turn. Oh wow!
Doesn't play it.
Brian, it doesn't look like Brian actually has a fatty in his hand though. I can't make it out, but so if Babcock can actually dodge Brian drawing an Emrakul here, he's still in okay shape, but he really needs to get that into play.
Sure. Bunch of mana.
Oh wow!
Intuition.
And there we go. He has the intuition, so this will allow him to search for an Emrakul.
Yep. It's boom boom time, my friend.
Yeah, I think you just go for Emrakul because Griselbrand, take 7, gain 7. Not really going to do that much for you here. You'd rather just hit Babcock for 15 and wipe his entire board away.
Oh, that's what you'd rather do? Wow. Bold. I'm just glad you chose a side on what to do.
So Babcock probably going to really regret not casting that 5 needle last turn. He had several turns where he could have cast it.
Yeah, I am very much surprised by that. Now, at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening, or Sneak Attack's going to come, or excuse me, Show and Tell could just put Emrakul into play, but the fact that he can Show and Tell in Sneak Attack and then activate Sneak Attack and have Emrakul in play and attacking, essentially making it so that it has haste, could have been avoided here.
So, here we go. Looks like Brian probably going to just cast... I'd imagine he just cast Sneak and Show and activates, right? There's no reason to cast Show and Tell.
You want to cast Sneak Attack?
Yeah, I think just cast Sneak Attack,
okay. So Sneak Attack is going to cost him 5 mana, so 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 for activation. Okay.
Because you don't want to play into Pyroblast, potentially,
That's true. That's actually something to play around. I'll give you that. Now Ponder's going to cost 2 mana if you want to play.
Or Angel Despair too, same thing.
Also true.
You don't know exactly what's happening here.
Well, and it looks like Brian is going to come to the same conclusion that you have, just to cast a Sneak Attack. And now red mana.
Babcock probably kicking himself with that Pine Needle just sitting in his hand.
And Sneak Attack, you're going to trigger that Emrakul and kiss your permanents. Bye, 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 bye.
And again, Brian doesn't look like he has another fatty that he can sneak attack in next turn to finish the game. But again, still in pretty good shape. He's got 5 permanents to play to none. So
Yep.
I'll take this board state any day.
It's really funny because I have seen players lose from this spot before, which is very difficult to do. But sometimes they just draw nothing the entire time and lose from this spot. It's, as I said, it's difficult to do. As you see, Babcock is going to sacrifice that Bloodstained Mire to go get a land out of his deck. Probably going to cast Piddling Needle now on sneak attack.
Yeah, but the damage has been done now. So Babcock,
15 of it.
Yeah. So Babcock can go Needle on the sneak attack now, preventing Brian from actually sneaking any other fatties into play. However, we do know that Brian does have another Show and Tell in his hand. So
Yeah.
if he does draw a fatty, he's threatening to end the game very quickly, basically next turn if he draws a fatty now. So Babcock, it's not over yet for Babcock. I mean,
That's going to be tough.
if he can get Brian to brick for a turn, and then if he's able to draw like a lackey into a ringleader, into a matron, you know, definitely some options for him to pull out of this one. But again, probably going to be really regretting not getting that needle into play earlier.
Yeah, there are a series of draws. That is certainly sure.
Obviously, because of the Show and Tell, Brian would have been able to eventually get that Emrakul into play, but it would have saved one attack. And then perhaps maybe it gives you an extra turn to draw something else. You know, you never know. But either way, it looks like Brian's going to lead with a Ponder. He sees a sneak attack, misdirection, and land, and looks like he's going to. Or no, maybe that's an intuition, I believe.
Oh, if it's an intuition,
It's
it's
an
a wrap.
intuition.
Yeah, if it's intuition, it's just ball game. Like, it'll take a turn or two.
It'll
but
take
yeah.
a turn, yeah, but he's got the intuition. He can get another Emrakul, then he can show it into Tell next turn. So, yeah, basically in 2 turns, Brian has won the game.
Yeah.
Barring any top decks from Babcock.
Yes.
Babcock can still draw a Matron. Matron would be a good draw, especially now that he has 2 lands to cast Sting
Sting
Scourger.
Scourger, sure.
So Matron's a good draw. Unfortunately, I don't believe he has it. Now he's all in on Sting Scourger, I think.
It's unfortunate for him he can't pay the Echo on Sting Scourger, but what can you do?
Brian thinking about what his options are now. Looks like, oh, he's just going to untap here.
A little surprised by that.
Playing conservatively.
I guess he's really not much in a rush. His opponent doesn't
Yeah.
really have anything.
Babcock has 2 lands and playing a Needle. Looks like, it looks like we have land, Show and Tell, and intuition, I believe. Yep. So we are going to get an intuition here. Oh, I think basically Brian had enough mana to cast both intuition and Show and Tell in the same turn. So he's basically just giving himself one more turn to see if he could draw the fatty, so he can just cast Show and Tell and put it into play, and then he can cast intuition for maybe a counter spell.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So I understand that.
So now everything gets shuffled back into the graveyard because of Emrakul's ability, and the Emrakul goes into Brian's hand. Looks like Babcock's going to actually just save a little time, sack his foothills to get a land. At this point, I'm not sure if... I don't believe Babcock has a Matron in his hand. Could be wrong, but...
The sacrifice of fetch land here.
So both players just shuffling, waiting to present to each other so they can cut.
And then the bad news comes.
And then the bad news
Yeah,
comes.
I think
Brian does in fact have a way to get that Emrakul.
Yeah, the calm before the storm, as it were. Here's your Misty Rainforest. There goes your City of Traders. There's going to be a sacrifice. Braun Duin going to go down 8. And it's time to take some things to class. In just a moment, as Brian playing with probably the ugliest lands in the history of Magic right now, this combination of
I
basics.
feel like the white-bordered lands are coming back into vogue. I mean, people are really...
Yesterday, Brian
I've been seeing a lot of people playing these lands.
purposely playing the ugliest swamp that he could find, he told me. And it looks like he's trying to play the ugliest islands he can play, and then none of them match either. As here's some Emrakul, and there's a ringleader.
So that was a pretty good draw there.
2, 3.
Oh, wow. So, no It
No
doesn't look like
Scourger.
there's a Sting Scourger there, so unfortunately for Babcock, he's gonna have to top deck right here.
You see him knock the deck. What do we find?
Uh,
That is
no.
it. So, Braun Duin is going to win this match 2-0 over Grant Babcock. Sneak and Show does defeat Goblins. Yes, it does.
I mean, I don't think it's that surprising. I think, I mean, you know Goblins better than I do, but it would seem like, at least on paper, Game 1, Show and Tell is probably favored, and then Game 2 and 3, it really depends on how prepared the Goblin deck is for this matchup. And it didn't look like Grant